Hello and welcome to episode 68, I think it's 68, of 10,000 Stitches Podcast, a weekly chit-chat all about the joys of small-scale knitting. My name is Andy and thanks for joining me today. If you were looking for me on the interwebs, you can find me on Ravelry as Purlbug, P-U-R-L-B-U-G. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches Podcast group on Ravelry. If you're looking for links to anything that I mentioned, any patterns or shops or anything like that, if you're watching this in the embedded video on the blog or the Ravelry thread, everything will be linked right below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, in the description box below the video, there will be a link to the blog post. You can then go there and find everything linked below the video. Today is Sunday, June 25th? 2017, and this episode will go live on Tuesday, June 27th. So I didn't record last week. I don't really know why I didn't record. I just wasn't really feeling in the mood to record, and I didn't have anything to talk about. I had no finished objects to show last week, and not even any new works in progress, so I just felt like I was going to be rehashing the same old. Plus, I was just kind of having a downer day last Sunday, so I figured probably just shouldn't record. But today we're going to talk about the usual stuff. I do have finished objects to show today. We'll talk about works in progress, what's coming up next, Knitalong stuff, kind of all the usual stuff. So yeah, let's do it. Let's start with some finished objects. I feel like it's been a little while since I've had finished objects to show, and I have 2 of them this week. So they're both pairs of socks, and the first one is, did I show you guys these last time I recorded? I don't remember. But these are the socks that I was making for Wesley, using sort of my adapted, Simple Skip Socks pattern. So here's what the top of it looks like. So that's the top, and then obviously the bottom is just, plain bottom of sock. So yeah, these are pretty much just a basic sock for Wesley. We have 20 rows of 2x2 rib. I have partridge heel, and then just a normal foot. He prefers short socks, that's why it's a short sock. And yeah, this yarn is, do I still have the label for it? Yes. This yarn is Trekking Sport, which is very misleading because it's a fingering weight yarn. I don't know why it's called Sport, but it's Trekking Sport. It's a 75-25 superwashable nylon blend, a nice hardy, sturdy German blend of yarn. And this color is just sort of this light blue-gray, as you can see, which if you're curious, the colorway is number 1498. And so yeah, these are both done. These were knit on US size 1s, which are 2.25 millimeter needles, 64 stitch sock. Yeah, pretty standard. Wesley seems very excited to wear them once it actually gets cold enough to want to wear wool socks, because it has been hot here lately. But yeah, he seems excited for them and really likes the pattern on the top. And I had plenty of yarn left over. So this is the amount of yarn that I had left over, which is just shy of half a ball. This is like 47 grams maybe. So I have just not enough to be able to make another pair of socks with it. But I was thinking that I might actually make Wesley another pair of socks with what's left of this, and maybe do just like some thin, like black stripes like around the middle of the foot or something, just to sort of add in those couple extra grams that I need to squeeze another pair of socks out of this. But yeah, lots left, and that's very exciting. So that was the first finished object. And these were what I was working on at work. And yeah, I just had kind of a slow week and finally got a chance to really attack them and get them done. So then the second finished object that I have is the pair of socks I was making for myself, and these are the speckled space socks that I was making for myself. So to show kind of, and again, these are a shorter sock, 10 rows of 2x2 rib, half a pattern repeat, so that's like about 17 rows. I have partridge heel and then just a normal, gusset and foot to fit me. And so yeah, let's show what the tops of these look like, since that's really the interesting part. So there you can see that sort of chevron pattern for that's part of the Simple Space socks. or speckled space socks, sorry. I'm getting my my pattern names mixed up. So yeah, I really loved these. Those of you who have been around for a while know that this is my second time that I've knit this pattern, and I just really love it. I think that, you know, kind of like the pattern name promises, it is perfect for speckled yarns, because as you can see, this is a very sort of speckly, variegated yarn. You know, it's mostly orange, but it's got some little bits of yellow, some cream, some red, some pinks. And I think that this pattern really highlights those speckles without, you know, either losing the beauty of the yarn and without, you know, having it just be a plain vanilla sock. So I definitely think that this is a pattern that I will go back to in the future when I have yarns like this where it's like, you know, you really want to highlight the yarn. It's like, so what do I do with this? But I love this pattern. So yeah, that's that. These were knit US size 1, 2.25 millimeter needle. These were a 68 stitch sock with 36 stitches along this top part of the foot and then 32 along the bottom. Yeah, and again, I have quite a bit of yarn left. Because my feet are bigger than Wesley's, I'm guessing that this is definitely less than half of the 100 grams that I started with, but it is still a sizable amount and enough to do something interesting with. So yeah, and I really, really love this yarn. This is a 75-25 superwash BFL nylon blend that I dyed up a really, really long time ago. And I had been, you know, really just kind of saving it for like the right pattern to come along. And I definitely think this was the right pattern. And I'm very excited to put these into my rotation. And the reason that, you know, they're short is so that I can wear them this summer. Because yeah, while Wesley definitely doesn't want to be wearing wool socks, I do actually enjoy wearing wool socks. Sometimes, like for when I go to work, either with my shoes or my Birkenstocks, because my work is so cold, and I know I've talked about that before. So for me, as long as they're short, wool socks are a thing that I can definitely do during the summer. So yeah, that's my second finished object and last finished object. So let's talk about the works in progress. So really quick, let's check in with my driftwood. I have made a decent amount of progress, I think, since the last time I showed you guys, since it's been about 2 weeks. But it may not necessarily look all that different. So I think when I showed you guys last time, I had all of this top stuff done. Like I was past where I joined up, you know, for the body. And so I've basically just been knitting on the body. You can see that I have a lot of it done. And I've actually gotten to the point now where I'm worried that I might run out of yarn a little bit prematurely, because this was not the sweater that I had planned on making when I bought this yarn. And so, you know, I didn't exactly know what yardage I needed, so I just kind of bought a bunch of yarn and hoped for the best. And I think I will have plenty. But I've mentioned this before, so I am very tall, I'm 5'10", but I also just have a very long like torso. And so I really want to make this sweater a little bit extra long if I can. I think the pattern calls for 15 inches from the underarm to where, basically where you finish off, where you do like then a couple rows of ribbing and then finish off. But 15 inches on me is like not going to be quite long enough. I would like to make it 18 inches or so, but I'm worried that that might, you know, cut me a little bit short on yarns. What I've done is I'm sorry, this pattern, I think I mentioned the name, it's Driftwood. It's by Isabel Kramer. So what I've done at this point is I have taken it off my needles, in that I have, you know, I'm knitting this on a pair of interchangeables. I talked about those last week, or last time I recorded. So I've just taken the needles off and put the end caps on. And so this is the 32-inch cord on the bottom. So that's, all those stitches are still live, they're just on the cord. And then I have put my tips on my 40-inch cable. And then my plan was to pick up the sleeves, and I think I'm going to go ahead and knit both of the sleeves now. And then that way, whatever yarn I have left, I can use for lengthening out the body. Because I didn't want to get the body to the length that I wanted and then wind up being like 6 inches short on my last sleeve or something. So I figure if the body's a little bit short, that'll probably be fine, because just with the weight of it, I think it will stretch out a little bit, but I don't want to run short on the sleeves, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that made sense. It felt a little rambly. But yeah, that's where I am with it, and I actually had meant to kind of get started picking up the sleeves last night, and then I just didn't. In order to kind of try and motivate myself to get working on it, I was like, okay, well, I'll wind up one of these balls of yarn into like an actual ball, because I'm using these, you know, kind of like weird cakes of yarn. And by the way, this yarn is Anchor Bay, which is a 50% cotton, 50% superwash merino yarn from Cascade Yarns. The colorway is number 10. And so I started winding one up, and out of one like hank of yarn or skein of yarn, I wound up getting 3 balls because there were 2 knots in the skein. So way to go, Cascade Yarns. It's always disappointing. I hate when commercial yarns just seem kind of cheaply done like that when there's a bunch of like knots and stuff in it. But anyway, whatever. So by the time I got done with that, I was like, I don't want to work on this anymore. And I've already been kind of hitting a wall with this because, you know, sweaters, it's just, especially if you're not doing anything like stripes or any kind of patterning or anything, it's a lot of just knit in a circle. And I'm just a little bit bored of it right now. So I think I might kind of just put it off to the side for a little while. I'll pick at it a little bit here and there. But especially, like I said, it is so hot here right now that I can't imagine wanting to wear that anytime soon. And so I'm just going to kind of take some time off from it, you know, like let the heart grow fonder with some absence. Plus, because it's so heavy now, it's starting to really like make my wrists and hands hurt as I knit on it. So I think I'm just going to take a break from it. I probably won't make any progress on it this week. So, you know, once I pick it back up again, I'll make sure to show you guys. But if you don't see it for a little while, it's because I'm just putting it away and letting it take a little bit of a rest. But yeah, so that's the kind of like old work in progress. And then I have a new work in progress to show you guys. So this new work in progress needs a little bit of preamble. So I was very generously gifted a pattern by a viewer, which is a pair of colorwork mittens. It's 4 colorwork mittens that have little octopuses on them, and I forget what they're called. I think it's maybe just like octo mitts or something like that. And I have been longing to make this pattern forever because I love octopuses. But if you've been with me for a little while, you will know that my colorwork skills are not strong. Like, I am really bad at colorwork. And to the point where I really only have one successful completed colorwork project, and even that was supposed to be a pair of socks and wound up as a pair of hand warmers because it was too small. So yeah, me and colorwork are not friends, but I want to be good at colorwork. Like, it's something I so want to be good at. And so I figured, you know, before I try and do these octopus mitts, which are something that I really just want to come out well, I figured I should probably, you know, cut my teeth on some simpler colorwork projects. And mittens especially seem like a really good thing to do this with because they are less sensitive to sizing issues, right? Like, if they're a little bit too big or a little bit too small, it's not as big of a deal as like with a pair of socks. So last night I started working on a pair of colorwork mittens, and I actually frogged them this morning because what I realized was I was trying to go too hard too soon. You know, the pattern that I had picked was still too complicated for where my skills are. And it was also a pattern that was just not intuitive, and it had some elements in it that just made it more complicated. And so I was getting very frustrated with it. And of course, you know, I was complaining to Wesley. I was like, why am I not good at this? And he's like, because you've never done this before. You just started and you've never done it before. And I was like, I know this, but I just want to be good at it right now. So anyway, so this morning I kind of came to my senses. I realized, okay, let's pick a simpler pattern. I frogged, you know, my first attempt. And so this is my second attempt. And I think this pattern is called Cornwall Spring Mittens, I think, if I remember correctly. And this is what it looks like. So let me get it so you guys can actually see it. So the colors, at least right now, are definitely not quite coming out right. We'll see if I can adjust that. But so these mittens are, it's primarily sort of this like, almost like a hexagon pattern here. And so it starts with this rolled cuff at the bottom, and then you have this sort of little like flag bunting, and then you have this sort of like hexagon pattern. And so the yarns that I'm using here, this main color, the green, is maybe familiar. This is what I was using to make the flax light and then frogged. This is sort of a maroon color, and this is, I think, Deborah Norville, like Serenity sock yarn. I have like 150-gram skein of this, so I figured it would work well for that. And then this color up here, this is the yarn that I used to make the traveling cables mitts, and had a bunch left over from. So yeah, this one is going swimmingly. I started this morning, and I'm already about halfway through like this section. I actually put in the little kind of like holder stitches for the thumb a little while ago. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's these stitches right here. It kind of blends in, but like this is a little bit of waste yarn to hold the stitches for the thumb. But yeah, and in case you want to see the insides, this is what my floats look like. They're not great, but I'm not bothering to do too much work to capture them or anything, because I'm assuming that these will be for me, and I know better than to try and like put my hands in them too quickly. So I doubt I will have any issues with like catching floats. But yeah, this is going a heck of a lot better. I think mostly because this is just a much simpler pattern. It's just, you know, big chunks, and it's easily memorizable. Like I've already memorized sort of the pattern for this chunk, so I don't have to keep looking back at the charts in the pattern. And so this is just going a heck of a lot better. I feel like I have a heck of a lot better, you know, gauge on my tension and everything. And yeah, I think that these will result in a wearable pair of mittens. Like they're definitely not perfect right now. Like I don't know if you guys can see this, but there is definitely some like puckering. You can kind of see like there's a little bit of like a 3D effect here, and I'm hoping that that will just work itself out when I block them when they're done. Because I've heard that color work, a lot of, you know, sins can be erased with just some good blocking. So I'm gonna hope for that. And I will definitely, once I finish them, try and make sure that I block one and leave the other one unblocked to maybe show a comparison, so that if it does make a huge difference, you can see like, okay, it'll fix itself in the end. But yeah, these are going really well, and I'm just having a great time with it. And the designer of this pair of mittens, she has designed a whole bunch of these sort of like colorwork mittens. And I think I will probably pick another one of her patterns as kind of like a next step up in difficulty. And it's really cool because she's from Minnesota. She's from Minneapolis, actually. So she has like twins themed mittens and like Minnesota Nice themed mittens. And I'm just like, oh, this is one of my favorite designers. This is great. So yeah, shout out to the Minnesota knitters. But yeah, so that's my other work in progress. Like I said, you know, this is the first one, or well, I didn't say, but this is the first one of two, and hopefully I will have them finished by next weekend. It seems to be going pretty quick because it's very popcorny, because again, it's just very repetitive, very sort of easy to do. But I definitely can tell that my colorwork abilities are getting better, just, you know, purely from repetition. So that's been nice. But yeah, that's it for my works in progress. So let's take a pause, and then we'll talk about what's coming up next. I'm back, and I grabbed some water. I don't think I mentioned this when I started, but what time is it? About an hour ago, I got back from a run, and of course I showered and, you know, had a snack and everything, but I still am feeling like I'm very like jittery and like sweaty, like post-run sweaty. So I'm sorry if I'm very like red-faced right now. I can be totally cooled down and relaxed after working out, but my body is still like, nope, you need to be red and sweaty. So yeah. But anyway, I grabbed some water, and I wanted to show you guys the mug that I'm drinking out of. This is our little raccoon mug. It's very cute. It's actually Wesley's mug, but he's letting me borrow it right now. We only have, I think, a total of 6 mugs. We downsized hugely in our mug collection when we moved, because we used to have a ton of mugs. Because I'm a very big fan of like super cute mugs, and then when we moved, we couldn't bring them all with us, and so we brought 4, and then have gotten 2 more since we've been here. But we've managed to keep it pretty small. But yeah, this one's a pretty cute one. I have an owl one that's kind of like my counterpart to this one. But cheers. It's just water in here, so I don't want to drink coffee, because then I will just talk faster than I already do. Let's talk about knitting again. So I was going to talk about what's coming up next. And I mentioned, you know, that those socks that I was making for Wesley, those were what I was working on at work, and so I no longer have a project to work on at work. And so I'm going to be starting a shawl while I'm at work, and it is called Perianth, I think it's called. I printed out the pattern, but I left it at my desk because I didn't want to bring it home and then bring it back here. But I think it's called Perianth. And it's this really beautiful sort of crescent-shaped shawl that has these like flower petal sort of shapes to it. It's really pretty. And I decided that that would be the perfect pattern to use the sock blank that I got at the Powhatan Festival of Fiber, which, if you don't remember or if you weren't around then, this is what it looks like. So it's this really beautiful sock blank. It's actually got some stellina in it. It's like I think it's a 70-25, 75-25, 75 superwash merino, 20 nylon, 5 stellina. And it's silver stellina, which is my preference. And it's just this really beautiful sort of, I guess, a gradient. It's not like a gradient, but it's just really beautiful, and it really has this wonderful like watercolor effect. I know I showed this off when I got it, but I'm gonna show it off again because I'm just in love with it. Like you can see, it's just really got this beautiful watercolor effect, and I think it will look really good with that shawl. And you know, because it's merino, it'll be nice to wear around my neck, and I'm super excited about it. And the pattern looks to be a not super intense pattern, so I think it will be good for me to do at work, you know, when it's like I want something to keep my hands busy, but I can't always be doing something that requires a lot of concentration. You know, something like color work stuff is not a thing to be doing at work, because sometimes I will knit while I'm teaching or while I'm, you know, doing other stuff like that, where it's like I need something to keep my hands busy, but I also need something that I can set down at a moment's notice and not have to worry about like losing my spot or, you know, counting rows or anything like that. So I think that pattern will do really well for this, and I'm just super duper excited to knit this up. And this is from Dancing Leaf Farm, and like I said, I got it at the Powhatan Festival of Fiber, so my guess is that this must be someone who's relatively local to or around Richmond. But and of course I'll link to it, but if you want to see, this is their website. So yeah, that's that. And yeah, and so that's what's coming up next in terms of what I'm doing at work. In terms of what I'm working on at home, I'm going to finish those mittens that I was showing, and then I will probably move on to another mitten. I'm kind of not in the mood to keep making socks right now because, like I said, it is just so hot, and the idea of wearing wool socks right now is just not something I want to deal with. And I think I mentioned this, if not last episode, like the episode before, but I have more wool socks than I can know what to do with at this point. So yeah, I think I'm gonna start working on mittens, and maybe I'll give a bunch of mittens as holiday gifts. Who knows? Speaking of having more wool socks than I know what to do with, I actually have another pair of, I guess I have a pair of socks to show you guys that are on their way out. And I was hanging on to them just because I wanted to show them before I tossed them. But these are a pair of socks that I made forever ago. They were one of the first pairs that I made, you know, when I started knitting socks after we moved here to Richmond. And these are made with Patton's Croy. This is the FX in the Cascade colors. And these were a sort of unsuccessful pair of short socks. These were before I really learned how to do short socks, which if you've been around, you know that it took me a little while to figure that out because I kept not making them tall enough, like above the heel. So these had just kind of been a pair of bed socks, which were fine. I enjoyed wearing them to bed in the winter and just, you know, kind of around the apartment because they're that nice, thick, you know, woolly Patton's Croy. So they definitely did a good job of keeping my feet warm. But this one in particular has developed 2 holes just since I washed it last. And I noticed them when I was putting it on. I was like, okay, well, you know, you're done. So one of them is here by the toe. And then the other one is actually on the same side, right in the gusset. So yeah, like I said, these weren't a pair of socks that I really wore very much. They were mostly just for sleeping in. So I think I'm not going to darn these ones. These are going to be definitely a pair where I'm just going to hold them over the garbage can and say, oh darn, and drop them in because, you know, they're not a pair that I really care that much about keeping. So yeah, I felt like I should show you guys that before I toss them. So now that I have shown you, I can get them out of here. Whoop. And I think that's going to be it in terms of like my knitting stuff. So let's talk about the Knitalong. So like I said, this episode will go up on the 27th, and the Knitalong ends at the end of June, although realistically I tend to shut down the threads the morning of the 1st of the next month. So July 1st in the morning, whenever I wake up, I will shut down the threads. And I will announce the winner next week because I will have picked a winner by then. As a reminder, the prize yarn is this set that I dyed, sort of this like sock set, I guess. It's a 150 gram set of this yarn, which is 80% superwash Highland wool and 20% nylon. And two of the skeins, the main colors, are this sort of black and cream and white and green. And then the contrasting color skein is this sort of lilac-y pinky color. And this set was called Swamp Thing because it just made me think of sort of a swamp creature and then maybe some little flowers that would be growing in the swamp. Noisy motorcycles. But yeah, so this is the prize for this current knit-along that's running. Next time I record, which should be next weekend, I will announce the winner for this current one, and I will talk about the rules for the next one. But the next knit-along, if I remember correctly, the theme, the color theme is green and the technique theme is lace, if I remember correctly. But I'll talk more about that next week. But if you're watching this on Tuesday and you are a super fast knitter, or you have something that, you know, is in progress but has been started within this time, definitely still a couple days left to get it in. So yeah, and I've seen a lot of finished objects and I'm just very excited. Lots of pink, lots of red. So I'm very excited for the next round to see lots of different shades of green and all of that stuff. But that's that. And then question of the week. So my question of the week this week is another one that's sort of like related. It could be, you know, knitting, or it could be real life, which the last one I did was sort of like that too, which was what is something you've like experienced lately that didn't live up to the hype. And I definitely enjoyed the responses to that. And there were a lot of people that kind of, you know, echoed feelings that I have with certain like knitting things that they felt didn't live up to the hype, which was nice to know that I'm not alone. So yeah, great responses to that one. I really enjoyed that. This week's question, again, is one of those ones where it could go either way, right? This can relate to your real life if you want it to, or to knitting. But what is something new that you have tried lately? Could be a new food, could be a new like knitting technique, a new type of yarn, could be a new running route, it could be lots of different things, right? What is something new that you've tried lately? And I guess the implied question then is, what did you think of it? So for me, right, my new thing that I've tried lately is color work, right? I'm trying to get back into doing color work, or well, trying to get into doing color work and get good at it. So that's a new thing for me that I'm trying out. Another new thing, this is not like super lately, but another new thing that I've been getting into, and I've talked about this a little bit, but is houseplants, right? I've been trying to keep houseplants alive, and it's been really fun. I've really been enjoying it. So far, nothing has died, although I do have to show you guys one of them. This is my Groot. So this is the type of plant that this is. It's called a croton, and there's these plants, they're tropical plants, and they have these really beautiful leaves that are like red and yellow and, you know, deep greens, just these really beautiful sort of rainbow colored leaves on them. And so I bought this guy at a greenhouse that, you know, they have good plants. So it's not like I think I got a bad plant, but I've also read that these plants do not really enjoy moving from one place to another. So typically when you buy them and you bring them home, it's a little bit of a shock for them and they will tend to lose all of their leaves. And mine did not right away. Like it took maybe like 4 or 5 days for the first leaf to fall off, and then within about a week to 10 days, all the leaves had fallen off. And so now it is this sad little stick, but it is coming back. I don't know if you guys, let's see if I can get it close enough for you guys to be able to see this. So you can see there is a little bud coming in. So I'm hoping that the leaves will come back. I've been watering it. I've been putting it, you know, in the window so I can get lots of sun. But yeah, so this one is the closest I've come to a failure. And even this one I don't think is a failure. I think it's gonna come back. But otherwise, all of my other plants have stayed alive. It's been good. So that's 2 new things that I've been doing lately. Color work, knitting, and then trying to keep houseplants alive in my apartment. So what have you been doing lately that's new, and how has it been going? But that's going to be it in terms of knitting stuff. So if that's all you were here for, thanks very much for hanging out, and I will see you next weekend, or next week, I guess, because it's the week when you guys watch this. If you were curious about what's been going on in my life, stick around and we'll have a chat about that. Okay, sorry if my height seemed to change. I decided to sit down because, like I said, I had gone out for a run and I'm very, very tired now, and I got sick of standing. So I'm now sitting down, but I'm going to try and not move around too much because my stool sometimes makes some noise, and my nose is itchy. Anyway, I feel like this might be kind of a long chit chat because I have a couple of different things I want to talk about, and I feel like there's a lot of like empty space above my head. Can I fix that? That looks a little bit better. Perfect. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about goals and kind of where I am on my goals at about the midpoint of 2017. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about social media. So which one do I want to start with? I think I will start with the goals, since those are pretty definite, kind of like what I want to cover, and then we'll talk about social media. So yeah, we're about halfway through 2017. We're just about to the end of June, and I've been doing really well, to the point where I'm almost done with a couple of goals. So, one of my goals was to read 25 new books, and I think I have read 23 or 24 so far. I have been just like shooting through books lately, partly because I don't have a lot to do at work, which I've talked about before. So yeah, I definitely think within about a week or two I could have, my 25 read, and I will probably still keep track of them after that, but I'm just gonna probably be a little bit looser about keeping track of them, because I've been trying to keep track of ones like when do I start, when do I finish. I've been keeping track of ones that I didn't finish, and so once I've kind of hit that 25, I'm probably just only going to keep like a handwritten list of just like which ones did I finish, and not bother with like dates or anything like that. But the most recent book that I read is this one, which is called How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big by Scott Adams. This is the guy who writes Dilbert. And it was just really interesting because it's kind of, he's a guy who has failed a lot. Like, he is like one of those people. What's really interesting, so he reminds me of a podcaster that I listen to, and this guy, the podcaster, his name is CGP Grey. He also makes YouTube videos. Like, most of what he does is makes YouTube videos for a living, and he makes these sort of like short educational YouTube videos, and I'll link one in case you want to check it out. But he also records 2 different podcasts, and one of the podcasts that he records, he specifically talks about sort of being a self-employed independent creator, and his co-host on the podcast is also one of these people who, left a normal day job to become this self-employed independent podcaster, actually, and now he has a podcast network. And so they talk about sort of how they work as these independent self-employed people. And what's really interesting is CGP Grey talks a lot about the fact that like YouTube was not the thing he thought he was going to do. He was just trying anything to get out of his day job, and he, cast his nets far and wide and tried a lot of different things, and it turns out that YouTube stuck. And what's interesting is this book sort of echoes that. Like, it seems like Scott Adams wanted to do anything but be in a cubicle for the rest of his life. So he was trying all of these different things. Like, he is not afraid to try different things and see which is the thing that's going to work. And if it doesn't work, then that's fine. You move on to the next thing. So it was a very interesting book. This is another one that like, I'm glad that I read it, but I'm also glad that I got it from the library. So I would definitely say try and get it from the library if you can. I don't know that it's worth buying. Like, there was just not that much new stuff in there that was worth purchasing it. But I am glad that I read it, and it definitely helped to reinforce some things that I already had going on in my mind, and just sort of, kind of condense them and put them into words better. So yeah, that's the latest book that I've read. And in terms of, let's see, my other goals. So one of my other goals was to have finished 25 knitting projects in 2017, and I'm getting pretty close to that one too. I think I'm maybe around 18 to 20 finished, not counting a couple that were started and then frogged and stuff like that. So I'm doing really well on that. I will probably hit that goal by the end of the summer, I think. And then my other big goal, my other smaller goal was to watch 25 new movies, and I'm behind on that, but I'm kind of counting that as an okay thing because I'm trying to not spend so much time watching TV and movies and stuff. So if I don't hit that one, I don't hit that one. That'll be okay. But then my other big one was I wanted to save 25% of my income. And I've talked about this before. So my plan for this was that I had this sort of number in mind for my 6-month emergency fund, because all the financial people say that you should have 6 months worth of money in the bank to pay your bills, right? Which definitely became an important thing for me after I spent so long unemployed trying to find a job out here in Richmond. It made me realize that I was, one, really glad that I had banked some money at my last job and had that money in the bank. And two, I never want to be in that position again. I want to make sure that I have plenty of money to pay the bills in case something happens. So that became my big priority. And so I had a number in mind, which is roughly 6 months worth of bills, worth of money. And I hit that at the end of May or mid-May. I think I hit that point. And so then I spent one paycheck where I didn't bother to save or do anything. So that I think must have been my first paycheck in June. I didn't bother to put any into savings, and I didn't bother to pay any extra towards my student loans. I just wanted to experience what it was like to live at my full income without trying to bank a whole bunch of money. And plus, we had, had some expenses come up with renting cars because our car is still in the shop. And, just things like that, some things that need to be paid for. So, and so then this last paycheck, which was my second paycheck for June, I then started the sort of second part of this plan, which is now to start aggressively paying down my student loans. And the goal is to still be putting 25% of my income towards my student loans, which to me has the same effect as saving it, right? I'm saving that money in the future, of having to make those student loan payments in the future. So, but yeah, that felt really good to do that. With my, second paycheck in June, is putting a big chunk of money towards my student loans extra. It was about 1 month's payments worth of extra payment. So yeah, that was pretty cool. It was, it's been really nice. To hit that goal has been really nice. It just really has given me this sense of okay, I've achieved this chunk of savings that I wanted, and now I'm working towards getting these loans paid off early. And I know I've mentioned this before, but my big goal with my student loans is to get them paid off before I turn 30. And if I can keep it together and, make payments like I expect to be making payments, I should be able to hit that goal a couple months before I turn 30. So that would be really nice. So yeah, that's my goals update. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was social media. So those of you who are very astute, which I don't necessarily expect to be anyone, may have noticed that both this episode and I think last episode, at the very beginning, I usually say you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Pearlbug. I have not been mentioning Instagram or Twitter, but that's mostly just because I don't use Twitter. But I have not been mentioning Instagram, and that is because I have actually deactivated my Instagram, which, who knows, maybe people have noticed, but I have no idea if they have or not, because of course I don't have access to Instagram. So I've deactivated my Instagram. It's not permanently deleted. Instagram apparently does this thing like Facebook does where you can deactivate your account without actually deleting everything. So for the time being, I have deactivated my Instagram, which means that it's not visible to anyone, but I can go back and get into it if I want. Which I think, I didn't delete it because I think I might want some of those pictures, but I definitely think that I am going to delete it permanently. And I've also deactivated my Facebook, just because, yeah. Twitter I have not, because I don't really use Twitter. Twitter doesn't take up any of my time, so I haven't bothered to deactivate that. And I have a couple people in my life that I kind of communicate with mostly through Twitter, so I didn't want to deactivate that. And I have not gotten rid of my Snapchat, again, because I use that as a purely communication tool. Like Snapchat I use to communicate with my really good girlfriend who lives out in Colorado, and then my 2 brothers. And that's pretty much all I do with Snapchat. But yeah, otherwise, I have definitely been pulling back from social media. I would like to reduce the amount of YouTube that I'm watching, but I have not been doing a very good job of that lately. But the reason that I've been doing this is, I mean, there's a couple of reasons. Like it's kind of like been one of those things to where it's like this like self-feeding cycle that has led me to this. But I have done a lot of reading about how social media and like, sort of technology, in general is designed to be addictive, right? It is designed to hook you and pull you in and keep you using it more and more and more. And I don't think that's very healthy. And the big book that I read on this, which was very well written, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who has any inkling that like maybe you use social media too much, is called Irresistible, and I'll link it. Highly recommend reading it. I got it from the library, but I think I might actually go buy a hard copy because I would like to have it around kind of like as a reference, and also to loan it out to like my friends and be like, you should read this, really. But it just, and I'm sure that for some of you guys, you're thinking like, okay, yeah, it's addictive, but it's fine, right? Like I don't use it too much, and that's great. Good for you. I know I use social media too much, like way too much. And especially Instagram, I would, I'd scroll through my feed multiple times a day. Like I would check it all the time. And then I would also go to the trending or whatever page, and I would just scroll endlessly through other people's pictures, like people I don't know, and just like look at their pictures and then feel really sad about my life because like everyone was living a better life than me. And rationally, I knew that this was stupid behavior, right? I know that these people cherry pick the moments from their life. I do the same thing, right? Like you cherry pick which moments from your life you want to share, and you only share the best things, and you try and make your life look as good as possible. Like I know this on a rational level, but I could not do it. And so for me, there was no moderation. Like there is no like having Instagram and not getting sucked into it. Same with Facebook. Like I would compulsively check Facebook, not as bad, but like it's noise that I don't need to be there. So I got rid of them, and I feel a lot better now. I definitely can tell that there's a change. I definitely like it's not the only thing, like I said, I really need to cut down on how much YouTube I'm watching, but even that, like I've cut down on how many like vlogs I've been watching. I've cut down on the amount of videos I've been watching, which are just like looking into other people's lives and again, only seeing the best parts of their lives. I've definitely cut down on that, and it helps. But I think, there's just too much stimulus coming in, and you sometimes just have to step away, and you have to have some silence and have some time to just process the world differently. And who knows? Maybe most of you guys are like, I don't see how anyone could have this problem. And again, good. But if you do think you have a problem, I can't stress highly enough like how much you just need to step away from it. Because I think with things like social media and technology in general, it's hard to cut back, right? Like it's hard to cut back and still use it, and use it in a healthy way. Like especially for things like social media where you don't need it, you got to just get rid of it, right? Just go cold turkey, deactivate your accounts, put them on hold or whatever, and just see what it's like to not have it. And if you decide that it wasn't taking up that much of your time, or it wasn't that big of a deal, by all means, go back to it. But if you feel better without it, don't do it, right? Like just don't use it. You don't need it. Yeah. So that's been that, and I definitely have been feeling, better. Like I said, there's plenty of room for improvement still, but yeah, so that's why if you were looking for me on like Instagram or something, that's why you won't find me, is because I have sort of gone dark on social media. And I've even been trying to like cut back on like checking my email and stuff like that, because I can just feel that like the more inputs I have, the more stressed out I get. And I will link, circling back to, I mentioned CGP Grey. He actually wrote an interesting blog post sort of about this. Like, I think last fall sometime, he took some time away from the internet and he wrote an interesting blog post about it. So I will link that because it sort of, you know, expresses what I've been feeling a little bit better than I possibly can. I will also link some other videos, like YouTube videos or blog posts or stuff like that, kind of that say what I've been trying to say, but better. But yeah, I seriously can't recommend reading that book, Irresistible, highly enough, and just, you know, be open to the fact that you may have a problem, and that, like, it's not your fault because these things are made to be this way. I don't feel like bad about myself that I obviously can't use social media in a responsible way. Granted, it's not as if my life was in shambles, but it definitely was not responsible, and it was definitely taking away from time that I would rather be using doing other things. And I don't feel bad about that because, like, this is how these things are designed. Like, they are designed to mess with your brain and, like, get your brain to want it more. And so it's like, it's not your fault. It's the fault of the people who are designing these things. But yeah, hopefully that made sense. Hopefully it didn't get too preachy or anything. Obviously I will know when I watch this to edit it, and maybe I can clean it up a little bit. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me today. If you sat all the way through this, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.